Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I bring you founders, executives, co-founders, thought leaders, artists, musicians, you name it, in crypto and blockchain all around the world. And today I have an amazing guest almost in my backyard. His name is Ryan Fishoff. He is the co-founder and chief executive officer of eTukTuk. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you, thank you, Jamil, for having me. Happy to be here. And yes, we are practically neighbors. It's kind of fun. Small world.
Small world, awesome. So, and we're going to talk about our experience with TukTuks as well. But let's kick things off. The first question is this: is what is your background, and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
Sure. So I have a very extensive background in investments. I worked at a private equity firm for 6.5 years, doing cross-border transactions, primarily transactions in foreign countries. So I'm certainly comfortable in exotic or unique environments. And since that, I've run public companies and on the OTC. So really have a good understanding of building a company, understanding how to manage one. And I think equally as important is I do have automotive experience, and I think that's important too, in the sense that we are the first EV project built on the Cardano blockchain. From my private investment days, a couple of our portfolio companies were in the auto sector, tier two manufacturers. Also on the public company side, I have some EV experience as well. So, I think I have the right skill set to execute this vision that we have, with eTukTuk, and certainly the team too. We have a great team. It's not just me. We've built a tremendous team, over 20 people who are really committed to bringing sustainable mobility towards the developing world.
Excellent. And what is eTukTuk all about, and what makes it great and unique?
Sure. So eTukTuk is, like I said, is the first EV platform that's built on Cardano and on blockchain. And what we're doing is rather unique. We have designed a proprietary three-wheel electric vehicle, or colloquially called a tuk-tuk, which is predominantly used in the developing world. We designed it in Italy, built it from the ground up. It is very efficient, maximizes battery efficiency. But in addition to designing this vehicle, we are building out the charging network to power it in the developing world. So that's what makes this project unique, is that we have, proverbially, we're bringing the horse and the cart together, and we're using blockchain to power the network and provide a system for drivers in the developing world to earn more money and enter the modern financial system through the digital identity program that we're creating on the Cardano blockchain. So it's really, really unique, a unique project. Really bringing a real life use case to blockchain, which is, I think, something that's lacking. There aren't too many projects that actually use crypto in the real world. I like to call this Web 3.5, where it's the next evolution of crypto, and taking the blockchain technology and actually utilizing it for a real life use case. And I think that's something that we're doing, fairly successfully with eTukTuk.
All right. So anybody who knows about TukTuks has a TukTuk story, right? What's yours?
Well, it's funny. The one I have is actually in Texas. I was actually in Austin, Texas. I was actually being driven by one in a very hot summer night by a driver who was actually a human powered tuk-tuk. It was a bicycle powered tuk-tuk. And I'm a pretty large guy. I'm 6'5", about 260. And he was struggling to drive me up a hill. So I actually had to get out and help push the tuk-tuk. I actually pushed him in the tuk-tuk. It was actually very, very funny. That's my tuk-tuk story. I don't have, it should be more exotic, considering that, tuk-tuks are more predominantly in Asia or Southeast Asia. But that's my tuk-tuk story. What's yours? You sound like you have one too.
I have two. One's boring. I was in Cambodia, and we just went up to the top of Angkor Wat. But the other one was I was in Ho Chi Minh City,
Okay.
and I wanted to get back from the hotel, from the party I went to the hotel, and the guy didn't take me back. He took me on a tour. It was a bicycle one. He rode the bicycle to the chicken fighting area, and then to the monkey table area, and then also to the dog market. And after I was at the dog market, I was like, I really want to get back to my hotel. And he was like, I like paper with presidents' faces. So $100 later, I made it back to my hotel. So I was thinking,
with eTukTuk is that, in terms of not having to rely on cash or dead presidents or paper with, maybe even living presidents, where they live. That's something that we're trying to build and trying to, give drivers the opportunity to, not be cash reliant and build out digital payments, accept digital payments, because modern banking, with KYC requirements, really misses the boat on a lot of these places. I mean, there's 1.4 billion people who are in the world are unbanked, but there's a disparity in the sense that a significant number of those people do have access to mobile phones. So crypto is certainly within reach as a solution for them, giving them digital identity. So I think we're trying to leverage that in building the eTukTuk platform and network.
I was thinking also, somebody like me got abducted, you would know where the person is.
Exactly. That's more for the passengers. Yeah, and that's another thing for the passenger side. And I think what we're building is really geared towards drivers and the cities in terms of building out the charging networks. But certainly as we have plans to build out a passenger app as part of this, further down the road. So it's something that certainly we look to expand and touch more, and have more of a touch point, for more utilization and more inclusiveness, let's say, with our network.
I like it. So I want to find out the current landscape of the car sharing market, right? And in Southeast Asia and then other places, because you're global, including like the headwinds that your industry is facing right now with inflation and recession.
Sure. It's certainly inflation and spiking energy prices is affecting every industry. I think where it affects us, and I think where we bring an alternative or a solution to that is building out these networks. We take a place like Sri Lanka where we announced that we're launching our platform this year. Certainly it's been in the news last year. They were having certainly a lot of financial problems. The government was overthrown. I mean, everyone saw that viral video of people storming the palace. And certainly that that idea wasn't lost on us, but we're confident in terms of that. What we're bringing is will be helpful to the local governments, local communities, is a stabilizing factor. What we're doing is we're trying to decrease the cost of mobility. I go back to drivers. We're decreasing the the operating cost by up to 68% and increasing take-home pay by up to 400% with our platform compared to internal combustion or IC tuk-tuk. So the savings are really dramatic, and that helps in terms of stabilize in terms of lower cost of transportation, allows people to get to their jobs and spend less of their disposable income or whatever incomes they have to get to their jobs or to work. So it certainly has a trickle down effect. Also, something that's unique about our platform is that because we're producing the way they're designed from the ground up. They're also designed to be manufactured predominantly in the country that we operate in. So 85% of the components are made indigenously. So that also gives us an advantage from a pricing standpoint. We avoid tariffs, as well as allowing local labor to to reap the benefits of the investment. So there's a further down trickle down effect. So certainly we're not a silver bullet to to help to help cure all the world's ills, but certainly I think we're part of the solution. And certainly with our green solution, our bikes are do not emit any carbon dioxide, carbon emissions, and certainly pollution in these cities is a huge problem. Health the health impacts of these densely populated cities. Life expectancy is about 7 years lower than the rest of the developing world, mainly attributed to higher levels of carbon emissions, carbon dioxide levels. So it's something that we're really focusing on, and we think between the socioeconomic and environmental benefits really cure as far in the developing world. And whether it be Sri Lanka or some of the other places that are on our radar, in Southeast Asia or in Africa, they're all facing the same problems. And we think what we're offering and what we're building with eTukTuk can help solve some of those problems.
So you're launching in Sri Lanka, and they've been supportive of you.
Yes, they have been. We are working very closely with the government. We have a team on the ground there. We're also working with some of the large private companies there on the ground as well. So it's a really, really collaborative effort that I think gives us a great high probability of success. Working with the government, with private industry there, and we'll certainly set eTukTuk up for success to launch and go into other territories as we move forward.
I'm just like that I tuned in like as soon as you said that, because Tim Draper went to Sri Lanka last week and talked about Bitcoin, and they said we don't want it. And you're on the Cardano blockchain, so the government's not against blockchain, just against Bitcoin. So it seems.
I think, certainly I think Cardano has a great track record in terms of being environmentally friendly and also being embraced in the developing world. So that's one of the reasons why we picked it. Also in terms of why we picked it is it's able to execute transactions a lot faster. I don't think Sri Lanka sees it from the technical side, but we do, in the sense that it can process about 250, 255 transactions per second versus what Bitcoin can do, which is about 15 to 45. So on our network, that's key as well. So it's not just social reasons that we picked it. We have real reasons from a technical standpoint why we've chosen Cardano.
Excellent. So that's going to tie into my next question then, about consumer preference, right? Why is consumer preference for vehicle ownership gradually declining, and how does that impact carbon emissions? Because you're carbon friendly or neutral. How does that tie in together?
Well, I think it's a function of where you're operating. Where we're operating is in densely populated cities. So, like Colombo, the roads aren't very developed. Tuk-tuks are the most predominant form of transportation, and that's the case in many developing cities in Thailand, Bangkok, in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, other places around Southeast Asia, and in Africa. Also they're more affordable than four-wheel vehicles. So as far as the shared economy, yes, there's a higher proliferation of shared rides where people again have access to mobile phones, and it's something that I think we can take advantage of, and in terms of it works in our favor, especially in the fact that the eTukTuks emit significantly less carbon emissions or zero emissions than IC tuk-tuks. Currently, just to give you a stat, there are currently 270 million IC tuk-tuks on the road right now. That number is projected to grow to 400 million by 2040. and they're the biggest contributors of CO2 emissions. They actually, I see tuk-tuks contribute more CO2 emissions per square meter than actual four-wheel vehicles, because four-wheeled vehicles are much more efficient now, the new ones, as well as the fact that they're less prevalent in these densely populated cities. So it's something that, in terms of the sharing economy, I think we're aligning ourselves to, really address a problem that's going to be growing, in the coming years. So it's something that I think, with what we're offering and what we're building, directly addresses that, and also helps cure that trend, because the pollution in these cities isn't getting any better; it's getting worse. We're hoping that, not to borrow a phrase from another crisis, but flatten the curve, proverbially, of pollution.
Flattening the curve's good.
I,
I didn't realize.
That might be an oyster I don't want to open, but yeah, I think it was a good analogy as far as just from what we're trying to accomplish with pollution.
Well, you opened the oyster, but I'm gonna put the oyster aside for a little bit.
Sure.
And I'm going to ask you about whenever I've had a couple of mobility conversations and fleet and stuff like that, and I like to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations. But they don't have to necessarily be UN goals, but these are two goals, and I want to talk about them. The first one is to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And I know you focus on the sharing economy. So how do you plan to use your project to maybe address that first goal?
Well, certainly sustainability. This is another reason. I think we always get the question, why blockchain? And we want to focus on the sharing economy. What we're building is a network that can be embraced all over the world. And I think that's part of the issue here is the disproportionate, or the inequality of pollution, as well as and the disparity between the developing world and the developed world. And certainly, we'd be remiss not to embrace that or discuss that, because that's certainly a factor here. And certainly, the developing world has embraced sustainable technology. You see the sales of EVs in the developing world, or the developed world, skyrocket here in the U.S. And certainly in some of the other G7 economies in Europe, and in some of the more in Japan. So it certainly has an impact on air quality. We've seen studies that show that. There's a study based in Long Beach, California, that showed a discernible impact on the air quality when electric vehicles were introduced into the marketplace. So it does work. We've seen it work, but just like everything else, the developing world is left out from this. So what we're building is implementing this technology, but also affording people the opportunity anywhere in the world to participate with our platform, in the sense that we're offering through the sharing economy staking programs that will allow people to stake their tokens, and essentially be able to help local drivers finance the conversion or the acquisition of a electric powered bike. So that's really brings, it's a powerful tool that allows people in the developed world, or develop it to help bring about change in the developing world. So we think that can only be done on blockchain, and that's something that we're very proud of, and we think that also distinguishes our project. So it's something that we can demonstrate how blockchain, how crypto can help evolve, or help build in the real world, and we think this is a great example. The sharing economy, and sharing how we can help have normal people or regular people make an impact. I think that's what our goal is.
Another goal for the UN I want to talk about this one too is
Sure.
build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. How do you do that?
Well, I mean, in terms of, there's a lot of different ways we can go about that. And one of our long-term plans is to build completely sustainable charging stations. Certainly one of the critiques of electric vehicles is that they still use regular energy. They still use dirty energy to operate. And certainly you may have your own philosophy, whatnot. I mean, I think you're taking out carbon, you're reducing carbon emissions from the most polluted areas, so it does have a net positive effect. But certainly we can take it a step further. I think an interesting part of Sri Lanka that a lot of people are unaware of is that about 42% of their power is generated from hydroelectric power, which is clean, sustainable energy. So the energy already is, a significant portion of the energy that we're using in the stations is already clean, so to speak. But what we're looking to do down the road is build solar-powered charging stations that will further allow for sustainable energy and becoming completely sufficient and sustainable off the grid. And because a tuk-tuk, it's a three-wheel vehicle, it's only a kilowatt battery. It's a significantly smaller battery than a four-wheel vehicle would use. So the power requirement is a lot smaller. So it enables solar-powered charging stations to be able to adequately supply power to the vehicles. So that's something that down the road we're going to be looking at. Certainly to address that and align ourselves with Goal 9. I think it's important.
Awesome. So let's go back to your comment, flatten the curve. Right. There is some fear. There might be just fear. We've had some accidents here in the U.S. recently. One is a train in Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's been some crashes and collisions in South Carolina and Texas as well.
Sure.
And you have dying infrastructure here in the U.S. I see that, and the fear is that we're going to go back into lockdown. I don't know how real that fear is, but what lessons can we learn from what you're doing in your project to be able to innovate transportation and make it more eco-friendly and safer?
Well, I mean, I don't think I think certainly what happened in East Palestine, Ohio. I think that's just I think that that's more than an infrastructure conversation. That's a corporate responsibility discussion as well. I think what happened there is a confluence of of infrastructure as well as corporate oversight, especially with very, very volatile chemicals. We're not really dealing with. We're fortunate that we're not dealing with volatile and toxic chemicals. So I'm happy that we don't have that level of let's say high level of security or high level of high standard that we have to achieve with TukTuk. I think it's a pretty eco-friendly system that we're building. It's not we're not using toxic chemicals. It's proven electronics that we're using. So I think from that nature, we're fortunate. But I think what we're doing is building a case study for how cities around the world, whether it be in the developing world or the developed world, can use investment in clean tech to help better themselves and help better their local populations. And I think that's the key takeaway from what we're building in Sri Lanka and other cities in the developing world. You will see an impact as far as the carbon emissions, and you will see an impact in terms of the health. Now that the health of the populace, that will take a little longer to have a discernible impact. But certainly you will see there will be an impact felt on the long term. I think that's what any municipality or any city should be focusing on when they're addressing infrastructure investment, is that the infrastructure is designed to help improve the quality of life for the population. And you're seeing that in other places too, especially, I can't speak for some of the suburban locations, but you are seeing it in cities in New York and in Boston. They're making a concerted effort to make the cities more walkable and creating more open space. And the effect on the quality of life, certainly is discernible. So I think it's not to make it a coastal versus Midwest discussion, but there's certainly something to be said about the proper infrastructure development. In terms of also making sure that there's mass transportation available, building bridges, making sure there's enough mass transportation. I think New York certainly erred when they rebuilt the Tappan Zee Bridge and not having a train line on a Metro North extension to Rockland County. I think that was a huge blunder, and I think we will be paying for it for a very long time. But that, I think, is a perfect example of how proper infrastructure investment can help spur economic development as well as socioeconomic health.
I hear you. I go to the Jets game sometimes, and when I drive back over that bridge, it takes 3 hours to get home.
Right.
So the train would have helped. But I don't really make this a Midwest versus coast conversation. I look at it more like when you talk about environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
I look at it as far as my generation. As far as I'm a Gen Xer,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the environmental stuff to me, to my generation, is abstract, right? But then the younger generations, it's very concrete, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you bridge that divide, and how do you make it so that the community perspective and aspect that you're working on, how's it like to bring it together, mesh together well?
Well, I think it's interesting you say that, because I think the abstract versus concrete. I mean, I think crypto in general is a very abstract concept to a lot of people, and that's why a lot of people don't necessarily adhere to it or like it, so to speak, because some of it is very abstract. And I think let's say the millennials or even zennials are more receptive to crypto because it is abstract and they have been growing up in this tech world. So I think there's a unique dichotomy there that you mentioned. But I think from an adoption perspective, yes, I think what we're doing is we're trying to make it as easy as possible. What we're building in Sri Lanka is our app will be able to accept fiat currency too. They'll be able to accept those dead presidents or presidents paper with presidents on them. I think that's important for adaptation, making it more accessible, making it more receptive to different generations who may not be crypto friendly or who may not be comfortable with crypto. So I think that's bridging the gap is very important, and I think we want to make it as inclusive as possible. But I think the themes that whether you're a Gen Xer, millennial, zennial, even a baby boomer, I think everyone is smart enough or has the awareness that there's environmental problems, and what we're building here tries to address those problems. And I don't think it matters if you're in New York, Ohio, Texas, Colombo, Ho Chi Minh City. I think everyone sees that there's a problem, and certainly wants to be able to act in a way that collectively can work to to change behaviors or work to find a way to solve some of these problems.
I agree. It sounds great to me. I want to thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for your time today. It's been a great conversation. And I have one last question. It's an easy one. It's
Sure.
how can people find out more information about eTukTuk, about you, about what you're doing, your roadmap, any of that?
Sure. That's very simple. Go to eTukTuk.io. You can find out all the information about our project. And certainly, if anyone listening has any questions, certainly drop us a line. Our email is there. And there's a way to contact us on many different forms of social media. In addition to our email, we have an active Telegram group. If anyone wants to join, I'm on there. Our other team members are on there. So, looking forward to answering anyone's questions.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
No, thank you very much, Jamil. This was fun. Let's do it again.